July 20th, 1944, 6:30 in the morning. Just outside St. Lo, Normandy. The mist hangs low over the hedgerows, thick as smoke. Dew clings to tall grass. Somewhere ahead, a German machine gun rattles in short, angry bursts. The sound skips across the fields and then vanishes. Inside a steel hull painted olive drab, Sergeant Daniel Mercer wipes condensation from his periscope with a gloved thumb. "Driver, ease her forward," he says quietly. The tank lurches, then rolls. Tracks bite into the wet earth. It is an M4 Sherman. Critics back home have already started whispering about this machine. Thin armor, weak gun, too tall, too vulnerable. Soldiers have heard the rumors. Some of them have read letters describing German panthers and tigers as monsters made of steel. But right now, none of that matters. Right now, the Sherman moves. Corporal Eddie Ruiz sits in the driver's seat, shoulders tense. He can feel every vibration through the controls. The engine behind them hums steady and even, not coughing, not stalling, just working. "Feels good this morning," Ruiz mutters. Mercer nods. "She always does." Ahead of them, the hedgerow wall rises like a green fortress. Normandy's bocage country has turned every field into a trap. German anti-tank teams hide behind thick roots and tangled branches. You do not see them until they fire. In the turret, Private First Class Leonard Shaw scans the narrow lanes between bushes. His heart pounds against his ribs. He is 21 years old. He used to fix tractors in Iowa. Now he loads 75mm shells into a rotating steel chamber. A sharp crack splits the air. "Contact left," Shaw shouts. A flash erupts from behind the hedgerow. The Sherman jolts as a round slams into its side armor. The impact rings like a hammer striking a church bell. Inside, the crew freezes. Smoke curls faintly where the shell struck, but it has not punched through. "Still rolling," Ruiz yells. Mercer does not hesitate. "Traverse left. High explosive. Hedgerow base." Shaw works fast. The breech snaps shut. The Sherman fires. The blast shakes birds from nearby trees. Dirt and splinters explode outward. A second shot follows. Then silence, except for the ticking of hot metal. Mercer exhales slowly. "Infantry will clean that up." Behind them, American riflemen move forward, using the Sherman as cover. They press close to its hull as it crawls ahead. The tank becomes a moving wall, shielding them from unseen fire. This is how the battle unfolds across Normandy. Not in grand charges, across open plains. Not in duels chosen for spectacle, but in tight lanes, mud, ambush, short bursts of violence followed by tense quiet. The Sherman was not built to be invincible. It was built to move, to support, to keep pace with infantry, and it does. By mid-morning, Mercer's platoon has advanced 2 fields. The engine temperature holds steady. The transmission shifts cleanly, no breakdowns, no smoke pouring from the rear deck. A few miles east, another unit is not as lucky. Lieutenant Harold Green stands beside a knocked-out tank at a crossroads. It is not a Sherman. It is German. A Panther, burned and abandoned after throwing a track while trying to reposition. Its long gun points uselessly toward the sky. Green studies it with a mix of respect and relief. "Does not matter how thick your armor is," he murmurs to his radio operator, "if you cannot get where you need to go." Back near St. Lo, Mercer's Sherman grinds forward again. The crew knows the reputation of German heavy tanks. They know a direct hit from a Tiger can tear them apart at long range. They know their own 75mm gun struggles against thick frontal armor. But they also know something else. They have fuel. They have spare parts. They have more Shermans behind them. And tomorrow, if this one breaks, another will arrive. The sun climbs higher, burning away the mist. Artillery thunders in the distance. Allied aircraft sweep overhead. Silver flashes against blue sky. Mercer wipes sweat from his brow. "Keep her moving," he says again. The Sherman crawls through another hedgerow gap, pushing past branches reinforced with welded steel prongs known as rhino teeth. Field modifications. Improvised solutions. Adaptation in real time. This tank is changing as the battlefield changes. It is not perfect. It does not need to be. By evening, St. Lo will fall after weeks of brutal fighting. The breakout from Normandy will begin, and when it does, speed will matter more than thickness. Endurance will matter more than intimidation. The Sherman, dismissed in mess tents and mocked in rumors, will be there at the front of that surge. Rolling. Always rolling. July 25th, 1944, 11:45 in the morning, near the village of Marigny, Normandy. The sky does not rumble, it roars. Hundreds of American bombers pass overhead in tight formation, silver wings flashing in the sun. The ground trembles as their payload falls onto German defensive lines west of St. Lo. Columns of smoke rise in thick black pillars. This is the opening of Operation Cobra. Inside his Sherman, Sergeant Daniel Mercer feels the shock waves even through steel armor. Dust sifts down from the turret ceiling. "Feels like the world ending," Leonard Shaw mutters. Mercer shakes his head. "Feels like it beginning." When the artillery barrage lifts, the order comes through the radio in clipped, urgent bursts. Armored units advance. Punch through. Do not stop. Ruiz pushes the throttle forward. The Sherman surges out of cover and into open country. The hedgerows thin out here. The land rolls gently toward the horizon. Smoke drifts across shattered tree lines. Abandoned German guns lie twisted in craters. Some enemy units have been stunned. Others are scrambling to regroup. Momentum becomes everything. Mercer's platoon fans out across the fields, 3 Shermans abreast. Their engines create a steady mechanical chorus. Behind them, trucks loaded with fuel and ammunition bounce along rough roads, keeping pace. This is something few soldiers notice in the heat of battle. The quiet river of logistics flowing behind every advance. Private First Class Shaw peers through his sight and spots movement near a farmhouse. "Armor, 2 o'clock," he calls. Through drifting smoke, a dark silhouette emerges. A panther, long gun, sloped armor, low profile, built for killing tanks at distance. The German machine fires first. The shell whistles past Mercer's turret and explodes in a field behind them. "Hard right," Mercer shouts. Ruiz slams the controls. The Sherman pivots sharply, kicking up dirt. Another Sherman to their left fires on the move. The shot sparks against the Panther's front plate. Ineffective. "Smoke," Mercer orders. A white cloud bursts from launchers mounted on the turret. The battlefield shifts from clarity to confusion in seconds. The Sherman accelerates, closing the distance under cover. Shaw loads armor-piercing. 200 yards, he yells. The Sherman halts briefly, fires. The round strikes the Panther's side armor near the engine compartment. A flicker of flame erupts. The German tank shudders, then begins to burn. Mercer does not celebrate. He scans for the next threat. 1 Panther destroyed does not end the danger. But this exchange tells a larger story. The Sherman cannot always win at long range. It does not always need to. It maneuvers. It uses smoke. It works in teams. It adapts. By late afternoon, the breakout gathers speed. German lines fracture. Roads clog with retreating vehicles. American armored columns exploit every opening, pushing deep into Brittany. The Shermans keep moving. Some throw tracks in the churned mud. Recovery crews arrive quickly. Spare parts are swapped out in hours, not days. Engines are replaced in forward maintenance areas set up under camouflage nets. Ruiz watches mechanics work on a neighboring tank during a brief halt. "That Panther earlier," he says quietly. "One lucky shot from him, we are done." Mercer nods. "War is always like that." He pauses, then adds, "But he had 1 Panther. We have 30 Shermans within 5 miles. The math is not poetic. It is practical. Factories back in the United States have been turning out M4 Shermans in staggering numbers. Assembly lines move with rhythm and precision. Standardized parts mean a damaged tank can be repaired quickly. Crews train on similar layouts, so replacements step in without confusion. The machine is not just steel and rivets, it is a system. By August 1st, American forces are racing across France. Patton's Third Army surges forward after being activated, its armored divisions hungry for speed. Shermans form the backbone of this push, covering miles each day. They pass through towns where civilians emerge cautiously from cellars. Children wave small American flags. Women offer water and bread. The tanks do not look invincible. Some bear scorch marks. Others carry spare track links welded to their hulls for extra protection. But they move. On narrow French roads, columns stretch for miles. The smell of fuel hangs in the air. Radios crackle constantly. Orders change by the hour as opportunities appear and vanish. In one roadside ditch, Mercer sees the wreck of another Panther, abandoned after mechanical failure during retreat. He studies it briefly. Powerful gun, thick armor, sophisticated engineering, but complicated. Hard to repair in the field, hungry for fuel that Germany can no longer spare. Mercer turns back to his own machine. The Sherman idles patiently, engine steady as a heartbeat. He climbs back inside and closes the hatch. "Let us keep going," he says. The breakout from Normandy becomes a flood. German forces struggle to form coherent defensive lines. Allied armor slices through open country, exploiting speed and coordination. The Sherman, so often dismissed in comparison charts and heated debates, proves something on these roads. Not that it is the strongest, but that it is present, everywhere, day after day, relentless. And the war in Europe is about to enter a new phase, where distance and endurance will matter more than ever. September 10th, 1944, 4:20 in the afternoon. Outside the city of Metz, France. The sun hangs low, casting long shadows across harvested fields. Dust trails stretch behind armored columns like banners. The pace has slowed, but the motion has not stopped. Sergeant Daniel Mercer rests one elbow on the open turret hatch of his Sherman as it rumbles along a narrow country road. The tank is coated in a fine layer of brown dust, giving it the look of something carved from the earth itself. They have covered hundreds of miles since Normandy. France feels wide, endless. Villages blur together. Church steeples mark the horizon. And through it all, the Shermans roll. Hard to believe we were in hedgerows a few weeks ago, Ruiz says from below. Mercer nods. Feels like another war. The German army is retreating toward fortified positions along the Moselle River. Resistance stiffens as American forces approach the old borderlands. The easy days of rapid advance are fading. Near Metz, German artillery begins to find its range again. A shell lands short of Mercer's platoon, throwing dirt high into the air. Another explodes along the roadside, rattling the Sherman's hull. "Button up," Mercer calls. Hatches slam shut. The world narrows to periscopes and instruments. Inside, the tank smells of oil and sweat. The engine hums with familiar steadiness. It has been serviced twice since Normandy. Filters cleaned, tracks tightened, minor repairs handled by crews who have grown faster with each passing week. This reliability changes how commanders think. They plan longer drives, deeper thrusts, riskier flanking maneuvers, because they trust the Shermans to arrive. Up ahead, a destroyed bridge blocks the direct road into Metz. Engineers move forward under cover, assessing damage. The river below glints under the fading light. Mercer's unit receives new orders. Swing south, probe for a crossing. They turn off the main road and cut across farmland. The Sherman's suspension absorbs bumps and ruts. It is not smooth, but it is predictable. Shaw scans the horizon through his sight. Movement. Tree line ahead. A German anti-tank gun fires from concealment. The shell slams into the ground just in front of the lead Sherman, showering it with soil. Mercer's tank responds instantly. The turret rotates. A high explosive round leaves the barrel with a deep thump. The tree line erupts in splinters. Infantry squads move alongside, using the tank's bulk as cover. This partnership has become instinctive. Soldiers tap the hull to signal positions. Tank commanders lean out to exchange quick words with lieutenants on foot. The Sherman is not just a weapon. It is a shield, a mobile bunker, a confidence builder. By nightfall, they secure a shallow crossing where engineers begin constructing a temporary bridge. Trucks line up behind the tanks, headlights covered with slitted shields. Fuel flows forward. Ammunition is stacked in neat piles. Ruiz leans back in his seat, exhaustion heavy in his voice. Think they expected us to move this fast? Mercer considers the question. German doctrine had long valued powerful armored vehicles, thick armor, long-range guns, technical superiority. And those machines, when working properly, could be formidable. But the war in 1944 has become something else. It is about supply lines stretching across continents, about fuel shipped from American refineries, about factories in Detroit and Pennsylvania producing thousands of identical tanks with interchangeable parts. It is about keeping pressure constant. In a nearby field, Mercer notices 2 disabled German tanks left behind during retreat. One shows no obvious damage. Hatches stand open, no crew in sight. Out of fuel, Shaw guesses. Mercer nods slowly. A powerful tank without fuel is just a statue. The next morning, the bridge holds. Shermans cross one by one, steel tracks clanking over wooden planks. The river ripples below. As Mercer's tank reaches the far bank, he feels a quiet shift. They are no longer just advancing. They are pushing toward Germany itself. The fighting ahead will grow harder. Defensive lines will stiffen. New German heavy tanks will appear, thicker and more heavily armed than before, but the Shermans will keep coming. In workshops near the front, crews weld extra armor plates onto vulnerable areas. Sandbags are stacked along hull sides. Some tanks receive upgraded 76mm guns capable of better penetrating enemy armor. Adaptation does not stop. It accelerates. As autumn approaches, rain turns roads to mud, cold seeps into metal, engines strain in damp air. Yet most Shermans start when ordered. They idle through long nights. They carry crews who trust them not because they are perfect, but because they are dependable. Mercer rests his hand on the inside wall of the turret as they prepare to move again. "Still with us," he says quietly. Outside, artillery flashes in the distance. The road ahead leads toward the German border. And the Sherman, criticized and doubted, is about to face the test that will define its reputation forever. December 16, 1944, 5:30 in the morning. Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Snow falls in thin, steady sheets. The forest is quiet at first, too quiet. Sergeant Daniel Mercer wakes to the distant rumble of artillery. It rolls across the hills like thunder trapped under the trees. He pushes open the hatch of his Sherman and breathes in air so cold it burns. The radio crackles with confused reports. German forces are attacking, not probing, not skirmishing, attacking in strength. The offensive slams into thinly held American lines across the Ardennes. Infantry units fall back under heavy pressure. Roads clog with trucks, jeeps, and artillery trying to reposition. The Sherman crews had believed the front was stabilizing for winter. Now the forest shakes with renewed war. Ruiz fights the cold as he cranks the engine to life. The Sherman coughs once, then steadies into a low growl. Frost clings to the turret ring. Breath fogs inside the hull. "Good girl," Ruiz whispers to the machine. Not every vehicle nearby responds so easily. A supply truck refuses to start. Mechanics rush to it with tools and curses. Time matters. Every minute lost gives the enemy space to advance. Mercer listens carefully to the engine note. Smooth, no stutter. They roll out onto a narrow forest road coated in ice. Ahead, displaced infantry wave them forward urgently. "Armor up front!" a lieutenant shouts. The German attack, later known as the Battle of the Bulge, is spearheaded by heavy tanks once again. Panthers and Tigers push through fog and snow, aiming to split Allied lines and capture vital road junctions. Near a small crossroads village, Mercer's platoon takes up defensive positions. Snow muffles sound. Visibility is limited. Every shape in the trees looks suspicious. Shaw wipes condensation from his sight glass. "I hate this," he mutters. Hours pass in tension. Then the forest erupts. A German tank emerges between trees, its long barrel sweeping slowly. Infantry scatter. A Sherman to Mercer's right fires first. The shot glances off the heavy armor. The German gun flashes. The American tank is hit. Smoke pours from its engine deck. Mercer feels the weight of the moment pressed down on him. He knows the numbers. He knows their 75mm gun struggles against thick frontal plates. "Flank left," he orders. Ruiz forces the Sherman through deep snow, engine straining but holding. Tracks grip uneven ground as they swing wide around a cluster of pine trees. The German crew focuses forward, unaware. "Armor piercing," Shaw shouts. The Sherman halts briefly, fires. The shell strikes the side of the German tank just behind the turret. A burst of flame spills outward. The heavy machine lurches, then goes still. There is no cheering inside Mercer's tank, only relief. The fight continues through the day. American Shermans reposition constantly, reinforcing weak points, covering retreats, plugging gaps in the line. They are not invulnerable. Losses mount. Some tanks burn in the snow, black smoke staining white fields. But for every Sherman disabled, another arrives. Convoys push forward despite icy roads. Fuel trucks crawl carefully through narrow forest lanes. Replacement tanks, drawn from vast reserves, move toward the front. The German offensive relies on speed and surprise. The American response relies on resilience and numbers. At Bastogne, surrounded units hold firm as armored reinforcements fight to reach them. Shermans grind through snowdrifts, engines roaring in protest but refusing to quit. Ruiz rubs his hands together during a brief halt. "Cold is worse than the shells," he says through chattering teeth. Mercer gives a tired smile. "At least the engine keeps us warm." That warmth becomes more than comfort. It becomes survival. While some German heavy tanks struggle with fuel shortages and mechanical breakdowns in freezing conditions, many Shermans continue to start each morning. Their simpler design proves an advantage in the cold. Not perfect, but dependable. By late December, the German advance begins to stall. Fuel runs short. Allied air power returns as skies clear. Roads once seized by surprise attacks are retaken yard by yard. Mercer's Sherman rolls through a battered Belgian village where civilians peer cautiously from shattered doorways. Snow covers damaged roofs. The war feels endless here. Yet the line holds. The bulge, once a frightening rupture in the front, slowly compresses under steady counterattacks. The Sherman has faced the harshest test yet. Winter, heavy armor, sudden assault. It did not win through intimidation. It endured. And when the snow begins to melt in early 1945, the road east lies open once more. March 23, 1945. 9:10 at night. West bank of the Rhine River, near Oppenheim, Germany. The river is wide and black under a moonless sky. Searchlights sweep the far shore in slow arcs. Engineers whisper final checks as pontoon bridges stretch across moving water. Artillery flashes in the distance, brief and violent, then gone. Sergeant Daniel Mercer stands half exposed in his turret, staring at the opposite bank. Germany. The last great natural barrier in the west lies in front of them. Ruiz keeps the engine idling low. The familiar vibration steadies the crew. Shaw sits with a round already chambered, eyes fixed forward even though the darkness hides most detail. The order comes quietly over the radio. Advance. One by one, Shermans ease onto the floating bridge. Wooden planks creak under steel tracks. The river slaps against pontoons. A single misalignment could send 20 tons into freezing water. Mercer keeps his voice calm. Nice and steady. Ruiz nods, barely breathing. Halfway across, German artillery lands upriver. Water erupts into tall columns. The bridge trembles but holds. The Sherman reaches the far bank. Tracks grind into German soil. There is no dramatic pause, no ceremony, just another forward movement. In the weeks that follow, the advance accelerates again. German resistance is uneven now. Some towns fight fiercely. Others surrender without a shot. Columns of displaced civilians move along roads, carrying what little they can. Mercer's platoon pushes through industrial districts scarred by bombing. Factories stand silent. Rail yards twisted and broken. The scale of destruction feels overwhelming. One afternoon near Kassel, they encounter a final pocket of armored resistance. A pair of German tanks guard a crossroads, hulls partially hidden behind rubble. Their silhouettes are familiar by now. The first exchange is fast and brutal. A Sherman in the lead section takes a hit and burns. Mercer feels anger surge through him, sharp and sudden, but he forces himself back into focus. 2 tanks, spread out, he orders. The Shermans maneuver as they have learned to do over months of combat. One draws fire from the front, while another circles wide through a side street, crushing debris beneath its tracks. Smoke rounds bloom. Visibility shifts. The sound inside the turret becomes a constant metallic storm. Shaw fires once, misses, reloads. The flanking Sherman finds its angle first. A shot slams into the side of one German tank. The second attempts to reposition, but stalls briefly on broken pavement. That moment is enough. Mercer's tank fires. The round strikes true. The enemy machine goes silent. The crossroads falls quiet, except for crackling flames. Afterward, Mercer climbs down from the turret and walks slowly past the wreckage. The German tanks are formidable even in defeat. Thick armor plates, long barrels, powerful engines now stilled. He does not feel triumph. He feels tired. Ruiz joins him, helmet tucked under one arm. "You think people back home understand this?" he asks. Mercer looks at their own Sherman, scarred by months of war. Weld seams darkened. Extra track links bolted onto the hull. Mud caked around suspension wheels. "Probably not," he says softly. "They will argue about which tank was better." He rests a hand against the steel, but this one kept showing up. By April, Allied forces sweep across western Germany. Bridges fall, cities surrender. The once mighty armored formations of the German army fracture under constant pressure. The Sherman does not dominate headlines for single dramatic duels. It dominates roads. It escorts convoys, supports infantry clearing towns, guards prisoners, secures supply lines stretching back hundreds of miles. On May 7th, 1945, word spreads quietly through the ranks. Germany has agreed to surrender. Mercer sits inside his Sherman as the announcement reaches them. No artillery, no gunfire, just a strange stillness. Ruiz removes his headset slowly. Shaw exhales, as if he has been holding his breath for months. Outside, soldiers gather in small groups, unsure how to react at first. Some laugh, some sit down heavily in the dirt. Mercer climbs out and looks east toward a horizon finally free of smoke. He thinks back to Normandy, to hedgerows and doubt, to whispers that their tank was outmatched, to burned vehicles in snow and mud, to endless miles of French roads. The Sherman was never the heaviest, never the most feared on paper, but it started in the cold. It ran after long days. It could be repaired quickly. It arrived when called. In a war decided not only by single battles, but by sustained pressure, that mattered. The camera of history often lingers on the largest guns and the thickest armor. But the war in Europe was also won by machines that simply kept rolling forward. And the M4 Sherman, dismissed by many, did exactly that.